Tonight, our speakers will be discussing how social media has contributed to the rise of fake news and give us tips on how to avoid being misled. First up will be Dr. Sheila Wenninger, Associate Professor, English Language and Literature from the Academic Group at NIE, and she'll be followed by Diane Liao, Digital Journalist from Channel News Asia. I'll now like to pass the mic over to Dr. Sheila Wenninger to start first. Dr. Sheila, please.
Okay, can we tackle fake news through critical literacy? Are you good at detecting fake news? Okay, I'm going to show you 3 pieces of news, and then I'm going to ask you to decide, are they fake or are they real? Okay? I'm going to ask you to show your hand, so be participative, okay? And please show your hand, even if you're not sure. It's okay to be wrong. Woman smuggling 8-year-old into Spain, packs him in suitcase, gets busted by X-ray. What do you think? Just kind of reading the headline, maybe reading the, kind of the source and the picture. Is this fake or is this real? How many of you go for fake? Show of hands. All right. It's actually true. So the check mark means it's real news, okay? Next one. Majority of American teens think the G7 is Google's new smartphone, and G7 being the group of key economies or leaders of key economies, right? So majority of American teens think the G7 is Google's new smartphone, from the Adobe Chronicles, right? So they did a test, they surveyed some of these students, and some of them responded, majority of them responded that it was Google's new smartphone. So who thinks this is fake news? Okay, some of you, you're not so brave anymore, right? Because I tricked you the first time. You're like, I'm not gonna put my hand up. Well, you were correct, this is fake news, okay? This is from the Adobe Chronicles. Adobe, we love Adobe, right? Not so much about Adobe Chronicles, okay? Last one. Alabama Observer. Decatur man discovers bride is his own granddaughter, no plans to divorce. What do you think? How many of you think it's fake? It is fake. Okay, so those of you who said it's fake, you were correct. It's interesting, isn't it, that just going by the show of hands, which of course, it's not real polling, but in fact, most of you thought the first piece of news was real. Was fake, when in fact that was real. And the other 2 that were actually fake, you thought, or maybe you were just shy, you didn't want to raise up your hand. What I'm trying to illustrate here also is that it's not easy to detect fake news, right? And it's becoming increasingly difficult. Look, all these articles look alike, essentially, right? They all have the same format. They all have a picture. They all kind of are very similar. We were not really able to tell which one is fake and which one is new, which one is real. So there is a good reason for us to be here. Let me start by going over the definition. What is fake news? Sometimes people say fake news, right? And people mean different things by it. So let's get started. Let's clarify what we mean by it. And I want to start by clarifying what is real news, okay? Real news is really independent, reliable, accurate, and comprehensive information, okay? Fake news, on the other hand, lacks factuality, and there's an intention to mislead. No factuality, which means it's not accurate, it's not reliable, as opposed to real news. And importantly, there is an intention to mislead. Do you remember the first example, the Adobe Chronicles, right? If you go to that website, they actually, in their About section, they tell you, we're not a real news site. We're a news parody site, okay? Don't take us seriously. So this idea of intention is really important. Have you heard the phrase deliberate online falsehoods, right? It's a very common phrase in Singapore. The government kind of had this initiative earlier this year. Deliberate is the key word, okay? There has to be an intentionality. There has to be people deliberately trying to mislead us, right? Okay, why should we talk about fake news? Might be your question. Well, let's look at some numbers. I apologize, my visuals are very small. Didn't expect the room to be this big, okay? But I'm going to talk about it. This is a study that was conducted by some colleagues at NTU, and they asked Singaporeans, have you believed information from social media that turned out to be false? Okay? If you look at just the colors, if you add the green, the brown, and the kind of other kind of brown, okay, those are people who have sometimes, often, or very often believed information that turned out to be false. That makes up about 2/3 of the country's population. 2/3 of Singaporeans have in the past believed information that was actually false. So it is not a minority of people, it's a majority of Singaporeans that is affected by this. And it's not just Singapore, this is a worldwide issue, okay? You hear it in the media all the time, right? But why else should we talk about fake news, right? Why now? And here I want to talk about factors that I think are important in creating an environment online but also offline that makes us susceptible to fake news and that also makes these environments very conducive to people creating and spreading fake news, okay? So what are some of these factors? I'm going to talk about 3 factors. One's going to be economical. Economy has a lot to do with fake news. There's not enough discussion of this, okay? We always just think about, oh, fake news, we have to be good at it, right? We have to detect it. There's much bigger issues that we need to be aware of. There is technological issues at hand, particularly the nature of social media, okay? And also offline issues, okay? Social political changes that make certain, that make us, like I said, more susceptible and the whole environment, society, more receptive, unfortunately, to fake news. So I'm going to talk about each of these a little bit. Economy. Who doesn't love the free stuff that comes to us on our phones, right? Or on the computer? We love Google, and it's free. We love Facebook, and it's free. We love social media, all kinds of social media, and everything is free, right? In fact, if you have to pay like 99 cents for an app, you're outraged, right? Everything should be free. Well, but is it really free? Look at this quote. This is from an economist from 1971. In an information-rich world, the wealth of information means a dearth of something else. A scarcity, a lack of whatever it is that information consumes. What information consumes is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipient. All right? So information may be free, but our attention is not free. Our attention has become a commodity, right? Do you know the saying, if you're not paying for the product is you? This applies every time you use your phone, okay, to do something. Every time you scroll down the social media feed and click on something, right? Your attention leads to clicks, which leads to advertising money for somebody, somewhere, right? Why am I saying this? Well, most of the time, yeah, sure, let them make money. But do we want people to make money off of us who have really not good intentions, right? And in fact, lots of money can be made from clicks, okay? Creating an environment for fake news, right? If you can make up stories, outrageous things, and just to spread them, right? And people will click on it, and then you're going to get a fed bank account. Well, that's a pretty sweet deal for some people. Perhaps a textbook example of this happening was a case of Macedonian teens. You don't even know probably where Macedonia is. It's a small country in Europe, right? So these were teens who were writing these fake stories about President Trump in the 2016 U.S. presidential elections and spreading them through social media, okay? And they made a lot of money off of it. Did they care about American politics? They did not. Did they care about who wins the elections in the United States? They did not. What did they care about? Their bank accounts, okay? My point being, and read this story, very interesting story on Wired. You can Google it, it's free. The case in point is that there's a strong economic incentive behind creating stuff that people will click on, okay? So when we are online, just bear that in mind. The second kind of factor is social media, okay? Social media, and I like social media, we all do, right? It's a very important part of our lives. And in fact, if you see from the statistics, 2/3 of Singaporeans are active on social media. Especially, you see WhatsApp and Facebook are the most popular social media applications in Singapore, okay? What I'm going to say here, what my argument is, that the nature of social media is such that it creates an environment that lets fake news slide in, okay? I'm going to show you what I mean. What do we use for social media for? WhatsApp, right? Fantastic opportunity to create kind of groups. Maybe some of you have that, your family has a WhatsApp chat, right? I use it for my children's, the parents group to keep up with events at the school. Some of us subscribe to organizations that we would like to receive updates from, events from. I subscribe to the Media Literacy Council. Maybe, I use Twitter primarily for professional purposes. I get these news from professional colleagues from around the world. But then again, we also love social media because we get to see baby elephants taking baths in buckets of water. And who doesn't love watching baby animals? They're so darn cute, aren't they? Right? We also use social media to post pictures of our children, to look at, to keep in touch with family overseas or even in Singapore. And we also love to look at social media to be outraged at all those people out there who are causing problems and they're not being good citizens. And, we like to feel angry sometimes or, all those things. So you see, perhaps my point, a lot of social media is characterized by informality, speed. If you use social media, these things come at you at 100 kilometers an hour. Okay, every time you refresh, it's boom, 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 new stuff, right? There's speed. There's no time for really a lot of deep engagement, right? There's a lot of emotionality, right? And it doesn't have to be, it can be a spectrum from joy, watching those baby elephants, they're so cute, but also like some crazy driver who's caused, an accident on the highway, and we're angry at them. And there's also, because of the fact that social media build on your social network, right? A lot of times you are in touch with people that you know personally and you trust, right? So the context of social media is such that it's informal, it's kind of fast-paced, there's a lot of emotions, and you inherently, when you enter those spaces, you kind of have an inherent trust. It's all, populated by people you know personally. So there's kind of a trusting environment. And then fake news bubbles into this environment. Okay, you see my point? Fake news, it's not, it doesn't come with good intentions usually, right? But you're already in this state of, you don't have a lot of time to scrutinize pieces of information. You kind of generally trust what you see. And it's very easy for fake news in social media to creep in and get your click and get you to be shared. Okay, because of this environment. So we have to keep this in mind. What is social media like? What does it kind of enable us to do, but what are some of the blind spots of social media as well? Finally, some socio-political tensions, and these have to do with, we live in a globalized world. Things are changing. For a lot of people, things are not necessarily changing for the better. For a lot of people, change is not a good thing. For a lot of people, change brings uncertainty, okay? We feel like, the floor is slipping out from under us because I see new types of people. I have financial issues, maybe because of the new types of people. And this is context-free. These are global issues today. But this kind of uncertainty, right, that people are feeling, again, is not very conducive to being a critical reader, right? Often when you feel uncertain, you want to jump on something that you can connect to. You want to jump on something or some piece of information that resonates with your uncertainty, okay? That gives you an answer to your uncertainty, that guides you back to safety. And often, people who produce fake media kind of, they manipulate that, they take advantage of those feelings. This is an example for Germany. I don't know if you follow news. Anything coming about from Europe these days, I'm European, I'm Hungarian originally. Anything coming from Europe these days, it's about immigration, it's about trouble, right? And a few weeks ago, there was a stabbing in Germany. A German man was stabbed by 2 migrants, okay? And ensuing that, after that stabbing, there was far-right protests on the streets because migrants stabbed a German person. And then, police was involved, injuries, all kinds of trouble. And it turned out that after the stabbing, fake news circulated on social media that alleged that this person, the German guy who was stabbed, was actually trying to protect some women from these migrants. Now, there was no factual basis to these allegations whatsoever, but all it took was some, people, far-right, activists spreading these things, and what ended up happening was all these far-right, supporters came in from all over the state, right? Not just from the town where this thing took place. Again, what happened was, this kind of mobilization of fear, okay? Fake news really ignited that and unfortunately made the issue, the tension, even worse, right? So it's created by tension, but it makes it worse. Do you see the point? I'm not denying there's tension, but fake news is not helping the tension, it's just fueling the tension. So in such cases, the motivation for fake news is not so much financial, but really more ideological. And that's real, that's real. Okay, so far I have spoken about what I think we should be aware of when we think about social media and fake news. Now let's talk about the second part, which is what can we do about it, okay? Especially what we call critical literacy. How can critical literacy help us? Now, when you think about the word literacy, most of you will think what? Reading and writing. The ability to read and write. Now, after all I've just said to you, if you manage not to have fallen asleep, is the ability to read and write going to help us in this kind of situation? Is it enough to be able to decipher a text, to decipher the news piece? Of course not even close, okay? We need much more than the ability to decipher, to what we call decode a text, right? To understand the actual text. We need a lot more, and what I and many others are arguing is that what you need is what's called critical literacy, okay? What is critical literacy? Now, this is an academic definition. I must tell you that I'm usually facing a room full of academics, okay? So this is the most academic slide I have in today's presentation because I wanted to stay true to my academic roots, okay? But let's unpack what this means, all right? Critical literacy aims to develop the ability to question texts, interrogate question texts beyond actually understanding what they literally mean, right? It's what I just said. It's the ability to question the effects of individual texts, but also placing them into a wider context of power over language and over representation. So we have the text, being able to question the text, but also, what I just said, understanding things in a bigger picture perspective, okay? That it's not just about text. It's not enough to just stay at the text. You have to understand the whole, the logic of fake news, the economy of fake news, the political economy of fake news, all right? So let's look at what we can do, okay? How we can do this. I like to think of critical literacy as comprising dispositions. Okay, this is not a big word. Dispositions mainly means kind of a mentality, okay? You have to come to social media with a certain mentality, all right? With a mentality, with just a way of the way of reading, okay? The way of looking at social media. And it also comprises skills, okay? So today I'm going to talk to you or show you, okay, 2 dispositions that I think are important and 3 + 1 skills, okay, 4 skills. Okay, the first critical literacy disposition that we need is what I have been talking about so far. Awareness of the political economy of social media, all right? Understanding that fake news is not just somebody in their bedroom not having anything better to do and just kind of doing this, right? There's real incentives for people to do it. They're trying to make money off of you, essentially, okay? Either that or influence you ideologically, okay? Either way, you're being manipulated. Do we want to be manipulated? Of course not. Okay, nobody likes to be taken for a fool. But every time you share that piece of news that turns out to be fake, you were part of the problem, okay? And again, keep in mind the two main drivers of fake news, right? Financial and and ideological. And they can go totally hand in hand, right? They're not necessarily separate. The second critical literacy disposition that I would like to talk about is a bit more difficult. It's what we can call being self-reflexive, okay? Acknowledging our own partiality. And this is extremely difficult. This is, I don't even, that would need another talk to kind of discuss how this can be done, all right? We all are partial, okay? Especially when it comes to social media, we tend to live in silos. Do you know what silos are, right? Here's my group, and here's everybody else, okay? People sometimes call social media echo chamber. Do you know this word, echo chamber? Have you heard it before? Because when you say something, all you hear back is echo, okay? People repeating what you want to hear, people repeating what you said. There's no voice coming in from the outside. It's just echoing what you believe in, okay? Which is a good feeling, right? We all like to be in a group where everybody gets along and we feel like, we share some common beliefs and common ideas. But the problem with it is that it leads to polarization, okay? You stay in your silo, I stay in my silo, I see something that I like, I'll forward it, and we never have to talk to each other, all right? And this, again, is fertile ground for fake news, for manipulation. Because fake news specifically target the silos, you see? Because they expect you to believe, the messages that are catering to your silo, okay? And fake news creators are very good at this. So we have to do some reflection, okay? Reflecting, not reflection, reflecting. And acknowledge that maybe we should step out of our comfort zone and kind of explore other ideas out there, okay, even if you have some firmly held beliefs. Okay, let's talk about some skills. The first critical literacy skill that I want to talk to you about is reading against the text. Now, what does that mean? I just mentioned to you that we tend to live in silos, right? We tend to live in our own kind of echo chambers. So when somebody passes you a text or an image, right, and that image corresponds to what you believe in, okay? It kind of speaks to your emotions. You're very willing to just accept it. It resonates with you, okay? That's what we call reading with the text. The text, in a way, in some cases manipulates you. It's not always a bad kind of manipulation, right? Depending on how it's done. But fake news usually does it pretty overtly, right? Plays on your emotions, it plays on your beliefs, and it amplifies them. It wants you to react emotionally, so you click that button and share it, all right? Now, reading against the text then tries to turn this around. So reading against the text recognizes this, okay? So when you see a text, you're on your toes, okay? Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't read with the text. Otherwise, you would be just so critical all the time, right? What kind of a living is that? Okay? You should enjoy the text, okay? You should laugh at text. If it's a baby elephants bathing or whatever you get, some of that stuff out there is really funny, right? That you get in your feed. Read with it, okay? Read with the text as much as you want. But don't only read with the text, okay? Because if that's the only thing you do, you're going to be much more likely to share that fake news because you never learned how to spot some of the things that are telltale signs that there's something fishy with this image or there's fishy with this text. All right? So read with the text, but also read against the text. To give you an example, and I'm sorry most of my examples come from the United States, mainly because there's so much data on fake news in the United States. I'll have a Singaporean example too in a little while. So this is a tweet, right, which shows President Donald Trump getting off his plane to attend a memorial celebration of, memorial of 9/11, right? We just had the anniversary of the Twin Tower attacks, right? And he's doing this kind of fist bump, right? So here's somebody who is obviously not a supporter of Donald Trump saying, after all, who among us hasn't shown up to a 9/11 memorial this way? So they're being sarcastic, right? Saying, wow, look at this, he did this, how embarrassing. He's about to attend a very solemn occasion, commemorating the deaths of almost 3,000 people, and he's doing this. Like, that's not okay. Except this is not real, right? The photo is completely taken out of context. The photo was him landing on that day at the airport, but he was greeting supporters. There were a group of people very, happy to see Donald Trump, and they were cheering, so he was cheering back. But if you're a particular type of person, and I am not a fan of Donald Trump, just to put on record, but if you're a kind of person that really dislikes the president, and the U.S. politics is extremely divided right now, you're not going to read against the text, right? You're going to say, oh yeah, look at this guy. How can a president do this? How can this guy do this? Look at what he did. You're sucked into the argument, and you're going to share it, right? So again, this text targets a silo, okay? Those outside of the silo will dismiss the text as, it's just not even relevant. Okay, the second critical literacy skill is one that you have heard a lot, also in Singapore, right? Check sources. Check the domain, the URL of the address where an information, an article is coming from. Check the organization, the so-called news organization, like the Adobo Chronicles, right? Already, I think the name is a bit fishy, isn't it? Adobo Chronicles. But then if you look a little bit around that website, you realize that they're not real, okay? Check captions. A telltale sign is that there's no caption, okay? All professional news organizations, and correct me if I'm wrong, are supposed to have captions, where the image comes from, the source of the image. Often there's no caption when it's fake news, right? I'm not saying all the time, but that's another thing for you to look at, is the caption. Is there a creditable caption with the image? And of course, the about section. Now, none of this still is foolproof, right? So see, the thing about fake news, you cannot just fight it with one strategy. Because websites are getting increasingly sophisticated at this, okay? You can fool people just by faking all this information, okay? There are duplicate websites, if you heard about those, right? That trick people to pay money because they look like the real deal, right? Like a government website, and somebody creates a duplicate website that actually takes people's money because people are not, they look so much alike and people are not paying close enough attention. Okay, here's a Singapore example. Have you heard about this one? This was in the summer, so you must have, right? So the Kim-Trump summit, and somebody was circulating this image that, there's a graffiti in Chong Bahru of Kim and Trump kissing, Right, of course that's not true, okay? This is, a little Billy Goat is still there, okay? So this was the original was, so this was the fake part. And, again, think about sources, right? They're telltale signs. Sorry. This is written by Hello, It's Me. Doesn't sound particularly credible to me, right? Hello, it's me. And in fact, if you look just a little bit closer, right? If you're not just click to hit send or share, right? You realize that this is from their Facebook page, actually. This is uncensored, Singapore Uncensored. They take no responsibility for the veracity, for the truthfulness of the content that's on their webpage. Now, some of it may be true. Some of it may be completely untrue. You and I can send in some piece of news, right? And they will publish it, okay? So there's no fact-checking, no nothing, right? So when you read this, and also you can't see it small print, but the English is not very good, right? In Singapore, we have come to expect a level of English that also reflects professionalism, right? And the English is a bit fishy, okay? So again, some of these signs, I think a lot of people have talked about this. The Media Literacy Council has talked about this. Okay, the third key critical literacy skill is what we call read laterally, not literally, okay? Laterally means horizontally, okay? It means stepping outside of the text. So the previous point, number 2, You still mostly stay within the website, within the text that you're reading, right? Checking the sources, the captions, the image. With this one, this is even more important. You step outside before you even start reading, okay? Again, let me give you an example. This is very recent. This just popped up on Monday on my news feed, and this was posted actually by very close family. People with who would think, oh, you should know better than this, okay? So not Dale Davis. I deleted who the original person was. So they were reposting this Dale Davis person's news. So this is supposed to be from the context of Florence, right? The recent hurricane in America, which had a lot of news coverage, and was alleging that Anderson Cooper, who is a CNN reporter, is fabricating a story behind being in waist-deep water. Okay? And this person says, well, if he would get out of the ditch and report the real news instead of making it up. Their point was, you see, the camera crew is only standing in like ankle-deep water. You see the camera crew on the right? And they were saying, well, look at him. He's just faking it. He went on purpose into the deep water to exaggerate the extent of the hurricane, right? So I went outside because I thought this was exactly that kind of silo effect I was telling you about, okay? These are people, look at the hashtags, you see? MAGA means Make America Great Again, which is a Trump slogan. Okay, so this is contextual. In Singapore, you had something different. Already lets me know the silo that this came from, okay, which is extreme, Trump supporters. Again, this is deeply one-sided perspective silo. So I went outside, I went laterally, and I just typed into Google, Anderson Cooper reporting Hurricane Florence. The first things that come up is fact check, this image is fake, this circulating news is not fake, is fake, don't believe it, right? All it took me one click to verify that these things that 2 of my Facebook friends actually circulated was completely untrue. Okay? Again, these are close friends, or family, in fact. So take time to fact check. Another thing that you can do, and I'm reminded of my time, so I'm going to speed up a little bit, is reverse image search. What is that? When you see a viral image, so this one, it says, China executes 26 corrupt politicians. Okay? This is not real news, all right? What you can do is you can right-click on an image. This is easier done in a browser if you're on the computer, not on your phone. And you see it, I can't see it, search Google for image. Okay? So your browser, Google, is going to search for matching websites, matching sources that carry the same image. And then what you need to do is you scroll down the Google results, okay, the search results, and you see what's there. And if you do that, you'll find that this image is, in fact, from 2004. Okay? Somebody's recycling it, rehashing it, okay? Okay, I'm going to have to skip through this. So just to show that even if something is in German, and you don't speak German, one of the Google results is in German, you look at the date. You can probably read the date, okay, if you have good eyes, in this case. Okay, and you can see this image was already posted on the web in 2012. Obviously, it's not going to be fresh news of China killing politicians in 2018 if the image is from, at least 6 years ago. Okay, so then you immediately verify that this must be bogus news. So check outside, read laterally, okay? Always go outside a text if you have suspicions, and do a reverse image search, okay? Right-click and Google image search. So the 3 literacy skills that I mentioned: read against the text, remember, check sources, read laterally, and the plus one is call it out, okay? What does that mean? If you see fake news being shared, say it, okay? It can be very delicate, right? You're in a close group of friends, especially if it's in WhatsApp. And in Singapore, a lot of this happens on WhatsApp. And WhatsApp is social media, but not exactly, right? It's usually a closed group. And there's your closest family, right? Sharing wonderful news, and then some uncle or whoever, posts, or your sibling posts something that's obviously fake. What do? There's kind of relationships at stake, right? Do you call them out saying, okay, that's not true? Well, I think you should. And you do it in a way that's appropriate for your relationship. But you cannot let it pass. That's one of the worst things you could do. Okay, to sum up, I spoke about the need for us, in order to tackle fake news, falsehoods, we need to have the big picture, okay, understanding the factors that make us so susceptible to fake news, okay, but at the same time have some critical literacy dispositions and critical literacy skills in our bag, right? So when we read, when we are on social media, we can always rely on those and detect fake news, okay? And I just have some useful websites. You should probably take a picture of this for fact-checking. These are my favorites. Mothership, of course, is not a fact-checking website, but they're very good at being among the first to actually spot if something in Singapore is circulating. So, if you're in doubt, just go to Mothership and they'll probably have already fact-checked it for you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chiller. All right, next up we have Ms. Diane Liao, digital journalist from Channel News Asia. Diane, please.
Okay, so to begin, let me ask everyone a question, right? How many of you have shared something on WhatsApp to a family group chat without checking, just because you thought that would be useful for people to know? Raise up your hand. Yeah, okay, a lot of the room. Okay, how many of you have shared something on social media, this is probably more relevant to those on Facebook, without actually clicking on the link, just because you thought that, people should know about this? Raise your hand. Oh, very few people. Okay, I am very guilty of this. Sometimes I see the headline and I'm like, oh yeah, quite cute. And then I'm like, oh, actually, it's fake news. Okay, so a bit of background about myself. My name is Diane and I work at Channel News Asia. And let's see, on the Grab hitch on the way here, someone was asking me, so how long have you been doing this? And I was like, okay, I've been a journalist for 6 years, been a Singapore-based journalist for 4, and pretty much have had to deal with fake news for the entirety of my career. And I actually personally don't really like the term fake news, because I feel that it's a bit oxymoronic, right? Because news is supposed to be real. Yes? Yeah, and if it's fake, it cannot be news. So I personally take a little bit of issue with the term, even though it's what is most widely used today. So actually, for the most part, there are 2 main types of fake news. Misinformation is actually when people unintentionally spread something that's fake. And I've been guilty of it. Has anyone else been guilty of this? You're not intentional about spreading something? Okay. And then there's disinformation, which actually, I think the academic has explained a lot better than I ever could. A fake piece of information that has a very, very strong agenda behind it, even if we might not know what it is. So I guess today a part of me is here to talk about how we deal with misinformation, but I think more importantly, how everyone else in the room here can deal with misinformation too. Does that sound okay? Yeah, okay, I see some nods. Alrighty. Okay, the first thing is this, right? When you share something on social media, the first question is normally, oh, okay, have I read through this? I think it looks quite legit, then I just share lah. Okay, how many of you have this experience when you just hit share on something? Yeah. Okay, cool. So just last night before I went to bed, I saw this piece of this article shared by one of my friends. His wife is currently pregnant, right? And it's like 15 things you should not eat when you are pregnant. And I'm like, huh? I thought only cannot eat sashimi and cannot eat like raw things. I've got 15 things you cannot eat. So then I was like, okay, maybe it's new information to me. So I clicked through to it. I contributed a click, yes. And I was like, oh, cannot eat eggplant because it contributes to miscarriage. And I'm like, wow, this is new to me, Like, anyone here actually know that you can't eat eggplant? Not true, right? I think a lot of the older folk will be able to better advise us. Okay, and then I think there was this thing about, there were contradictions within the article itself. So at first it said, oh, you can eat broccoli, it's good for you. And then further down in the article, it said, don't eat broccoli because it could carry listeria. And I was like, huh, like that, then cannot eat anything lah. You're pregnant, now, cannot eat anything. I'm like, oh no, I don't want to get pregnant anymore. And the thing, my friend shared this, and this is an educated friend who went to university, and he tagged his wife. And I actually did the wrong thing. I did not call him out, on sharing stuff like this. But I think if we are not careful, right, because I think the behavior is such that if we know someone who is pregnant and we read something that's brand new to us, and we're like, oh, this person should know this. So you just hit share. And we actually unwittingly, spread misinformation that way. So when you remove yourself a little bit and you just go, oh, maybe that just sounds a little bit suspicious. I think there's something that I should not spread. But I think when it's tied to emotion, when you want to be helpful or when you're particularly outraged, I think that's where, fake news actually gets spread very quickly. Do you guys agree? Yeah. Okay. So I actually feel that the previous speaker has covered many of the points that I wanted to share with you guys. But the big questions that I ask myself, in my work process, don't run away from actually my everyday work. So I think in school we all learned the 5 W's and 1 H. Is that right? For the most part? Okay, who, what, where, when, why, and how. If you ask a journalist how they verify something, it really is very old school. We have all the tools, so I use Google reverse image search, to figure out if, let's say, a photo has been circulated. Unfortunately, no one has actually invented a video reverse image search. So if you know anyone who can do that, please put me in touch. I would really love to work with that person. And a lot of times we get WhatsApp messages asking, is this true? One very famous example that I like from 2 years ago, and some of you here might actually have passed along that message. I saw in my family group chat, after eating, you cannot throw your tissue paper into your bowl. If not, NEA will fine you $200. Anyone got that message? Yeah, well, now don't dare to raise hand. Hey, I also raised my hand, don't like that. Yeah, okay, how many of you forwarded on? Now don't dare to raise hand. I forwarded it to my boss. Who immediately told me, we need to call NEA to find out if this is true. Because there's nothing we could find online to verify it, right? The great thing about being a journalist is that we get direct access to the people who are able to tell us whether or not this is true. And so we called NEA, and they were quite puzzled. They were like, huh? Why are people spreading this when it's clearly not true? And I'm like, well, I mean, they are. I can't tell you why, but you can tell us that's not true, right? And they go, yeah. So I write up an article, and then it goes out on social media. However, I think that message still circulates 2 years later. The next thing about fake news is this, that the fake thing always spreads faster and wider than the real deal. I think it's true of most things that we think are fake. Like a lot of people have LV bag. We don't know which one is real. Correct? Yeah. But you can spread fake news, but you can find out which one is real because you can ask the people who actually work in the news. No need to go LV shop. Can just WhatsApp people. Yeah. Okay. I think the next thing is this. It's that some people might say, oh, but the news is very slow. I think we saw a lot of this firstly in the 2011 general election when my colleagues were actually accused of just reading tweets on the air. And I think it was the very first time that people were saying that, oh, I can get the news faster on social media than I can online. Than I can on TV. That was the first time that I myself was actually interested in the general election. I was 21 at the time, living overseas. I could not vote. And I was watching Channel News Asia. I was glued to the screen pretty much, not knowing that I'll be working for them 3 years later. And actually, admittedly, I joined in, right, to the mob and just go, actually, I go on Twitter so much faster. In 2015, when I had the privilege of covering the general election, I understood why. It's because we have a responsibility as the media to tell you guys the truth and nothing but the truth. And when we mess up, we have to take responsibility for that as well. And so everything that we report has been verified, and we are absolutely sure that this is something that we know you can pass on with no fear. That when you want to be helpful, you forward it on to your family and friends, knowing that, okay, they will not be deceived by something that's not real. And I think lastly, the thing is this. I think working in the media has taught me that sometimes we don't always answer the questions that people want asked. And then when people want to find out about something, they don't know how to reach the news. So, then there's Stomp that people write in. And then, or I think for the Chinese speaking, there's, 早报. And sometimes when you forward your query, you think it's a black hole, don't know whether they read it, no one's going to answer my question. Then when some website suddenly sort of answers your question at the back of your head, you're like, yeah, okay, this one is real. How many of you think that that's your experience actually reading the news nowadays? Yeah, okay, I see some hands. And I do think that this is something that traditional media that's been around for a very long time can do better. And it's actually just something that I've been thinking about, as a young journalist. And I wonder, how do we better serve our audience? Where can we give you guys an outlet to ask the questions that you really need answered? And this is where I do a little plug for a project of ours. You can actually WhatsApp anything that you find suspicious to Channel News Asia. And we actually can help you verify this, The WhatsApp number, if you want to write it down, so it's 8218-8281. Please do not call the number because no one will pick up. If you hear the voice recording, it's actually my voice. I had to record it 20 times because I kept messing up the number. But I think more importantly, it is an area where if you see something suspicious, if you see actually even an accident that's happened, or even if you are sent a piece of information that you're not so sure about, then please feel free to let us know, because then we are able to investigate on your behalf. And that is what we do as a public service broadcaster. I think my last point is that a lot of us take whatever we read for granted. I think we grew up in an era where I think anything that comes from the news will definitely be credible. Like my mom was always said, yeah, you read newspaper can never be wrong. And even growing up as a kid, my favorite section in the newspaper is actually the corrections part, because I wonder where people got it wrong. And then as a journalist myself, I am loath to write my own correction, and I sometimes have to do so, because it's an apology that I owe to the public that we serve, right? And with all the techniques that actually the academic herself has come up with, I think it's time that we don't take everything we read at face level. In a society that we're so used to, it being extremely fast-paced, that we want people to know something as quickly as you can, where it's so easy just to hit share or to hit forward. And nowadays, you can even tell when something is forwarded on WhatsApp. It's very important to slow down. It's not to smell the roses. You slow down because at the root of your intention, you want to be useful, right? You want to tell people something that, you found interesting. But in that additional 10, 20, 30 seconds that you take, you could actually be stopping the flow of misinformation, or worse still, disinformation. It still happens in Singapore today. I think that disinformation is probably not as widespread as it is overseas, and we are lucky to not have that. But we still have random weird things popping up. Like just last night, Mr. Tharman, our DPM, his photo and his comments were taken out of context on a Bitcoin website. And it's something that, we would not have seen maybe 5, 10 years ago. We will definitely still get WhatsApp messages, from our family saying, maybe there's a typhoon approaching Singapore because of Mangkut that has hit Hong Kong. But I mean, technically speaking, scientifically speaking, Singapore is geographically protected from such environmental disasters. But if such things actually generate fear or even a little bit of curiosity, if it doesn't sit right in your gut, I like to say trust your gut. Singaporeans are very good at that. That's why we keep queuing for the best food, because we trust our guts very much. Yeah, but anything that raises a little bit of, question mark in your head, it's really worth pausing and asking yourself, should I be passing this on? Should I be passing this on to someone who can find out for me if it's true? Should I maybe just pause and not hit share? And yeah, that's where all of us can take responsibility and go, okay, it stops with me. And maybe for the person who shared it with me, I can just ask them, hey, you know, like, where do you get this from? Do you want to maybe have a look at a bit of the details? And that's the reason why we're all here, right? It's to find out more. It's to be to be responsible for our choices. And at the end of the day, to be more informed. And yeah, to read the right sources, like channelnewsasia.com. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone has any questions? Yes, we have one lady.
My question is, how can you tell the difference between an opinion piece and fake news?
All right, an opinion piece and fake news. Which question are you directing that to? Okay, to any one of you. Perhaps, all right, Doctor.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we didn't quite have time to get down to the text level, right? Because what you're asking is really something that requires very close reading potentially. I think, and this is just kind of from my experience working with fake news and against fake news, is kind of what we both share, to focus on extremely emotional, text, meaning it's clearly aiming to evoke strong emotions in you, okay? It's sensational typically. Again, not always. Unfortunately we cannot, if we had the recipe for fake news, it would be much easier to fight it, right? But they're becoming increasingly good at it. So I would say the kind of sensational tone, okay, that often the attention-grabbing, click-grabbing headlines, right? And the kind of very triggering emotions in you as a reader, okay? That should already put you in the, I have to read against this text and see see how this is manipulating me.
So I think the problem of fake news is not new, right? I think it pretty much has existed since humankind can communicate. I think opinion pieces, where previously were only published in newspapers after they've been fact-checked by editors, now anyone can be a commentator. Anyone's a publisher. So, in the 90s, it was all about starting your own website, right? And then now with social media, you can write something on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and hit publish in a matter of seconds, if not minutes. And so motivation, I feel, is something that is difficult to nail, but is important to figure out. So so I blog, outside of my day job. I blog twice a year, once during Easter and once at the end of the year. During Easter, I write about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Some people will tell me that it's fake news, and some people will tell me that it's not. Yeah. However, my intention is always to share my faith. It's not to, belittle anybody else. It's not to, put down another religion, for instance. If someone has written an opinion piece, deliberately, maligning or sidelining a group of people who refuses to entertain other points of view, then that is a piece that I personally would feel extremely uncomfortable with sharing, because then this person is not open, to differing ideas, and has also not substantiated his or her argument. So those are a few things. Again, none of this is foolproof, but these are a few things that we can watch out for.
All right, thank you, speakers. Do we have a second question? I do recall a hand, yes, to the gentleman in orange on the left-hand side of the audience.
I have a very simple question. Should perpetrators of fake news be severely dealt with? Should they be punished? Because you know why? There's the element of intention. Some they do it intentionally, right? Some they unwittingly do it. Inadvertently, you see, so you know what I mean? So.
Okay. I think in some cases, in other contexts, they have been persecuted, and there are countries that are now actively legislating against it, right? Again, first of all, one of the problems is often it's very difficult to track down the author, right? Who was it that actually who does this piece of news originate from? Okay, that's also a sure sign of fake news. It just spreads so virally, and you don't know where it's coming from, right? Because it's so hard to track it down. In that case, of course, it will be very difficult for you to, to litigate, right? To actually bring the person to justice. Like you said, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not in law. That's not my cup of tea. It's kind of a hard question. Obviously, in some cases, when there's clear ramifications, economic, in terms of personal safety, things like that, there are other avenues of the justice system that can be tapped on to persecute a person. But the question of just by putting falseness out there, what are the legal grounds for persecution? I think that question is still being debated.
So a more serious answer to your question, instead of fobbing it off to our politicians. You will recall earlier this year that there were a series of debates in Parliament by the Select Committee for Deliberate Online Falsehoods. It's a bit of a mouthful. You can just Google it on CNA, and we actually have a section just dedicated to it. I think you will see that the distinction between misinformation and disinformation, I think first must be made clear. Because one of the fears is that, what if I accidentally share something? Am I then culpable? If I am not the originator of that piece of news, but yet, I pass it along, what does that mean for me? Again, these issues are still being discussed. The legislation may or may not be worked out. Different platforms were also questioned very strictly. So some of you may have seen a 1-minute clip put together by Mothership, where Minister Shanmugam actually quizzed the head of policy at Facebook on what they are doing to control. And Facebook, while a very, very big platform, also understands that they are not able to keep up with the pace at which fake news is being spread. But as a platform, are they responsible? Are they not? These questions, I think we're learning the answers as we go. And if you were to ask my personal opinion, and this is obviously not related to my employer, but I think that people who create disinformation for the purpose of profit, for the purpose of driving tension, they should be persecuted. But the question is, how do we then trace them? If they live in another country, what sort of legal rights do we have? And these things evolve as we go along, as technology, as we use technology and are becoming increasingly reliant on it.
Thank you very much. Do we have another? Yes.
The hurricane Florence. I do receive a short video clip about airplane being lifted by hurricanes, but I recall that these are from a movie. I think it's Storm Chaser.
Yes.
So how do you, from your perspective, discern whether the video is genuine or fake?
All right, I would just like to set the context better for the rest of the audience. So what happened a few days ago, I saw this on my Facebook as well. There was a video being spread. They showed this passenger jetliner that seemed to be spinning out of control in the air. It did a complete 360 turn. And immediately after that, the scene cut to basically like a self-shot handphone camera video, of, stricken passengers exiting. They seem to be walking on the runway. So it was deemed a fake video, but still it got spread. It got spread a large number of times because people actually thought that, oh my gosh, the hurricane actually caused the entire, 747 to flip a 360 in midair and all that. So yes, our dear sir over there, he asked the question, how can we tell, all right, whether, such videos, are fake or not. So I think I will defer to our speaker guests first because I also have one method of spotting these as well, yeah.
Well, I also received the video, and I was like, wow, is that real? Okay, so with regards to that video, one thing is, of course, what I was saying. If you have any suspicion, that looked almost unreal, didn't it? I mean, the plane was so close to the ground and did a 360, I don't know about that. So I immediately went to Google it. Okay, remember what I said? Lateral reading. If you have any doubts, go outside, check on it, and it came up or within hours of it being circulated. But the other thing that I noticed about that video, if you've seen it, was first of all, the image itself was very different. The first image, and it's CGI actually, at least according to one of the fact-checking site, they manipulated the video, right, using computers. And the tone of the image, the tone of the video shot in the first half, right, was very different from when it switched to the perspective where people were getting off the plane. Did you notice that? Those of you who have seen it? I think you're finding the video, right? Yeah. Let's take a quick look. Okay, that is not... Okay, so you see like kind of a darkish tone, right? It's almost like black and white. Okay, all in color. Do you see the difference between the two videos? This is very sharp colors. The airplane is in color, the tail of the airplane with the airline. The camera, the shooting is from, you know, some different perspective. I was already very suspicious of that. That was the point when I went outside to look for it, you know? That's when I thought there's manipulation going on.
I think the trouble with that particular video is that it's been edited very skillfully. So you'll notice that the audio actually begins before the image cut, and then there is a little bit of a date label, which makes people think that it belongs to a news agency, right? I think in an era that we grew up in, where, you know, everything that looks credible is credible, it's still important to pause and to go, okay, why are the two scenes so contrasting? Why is it that I guess the passengers, like, you know, look like they are disembarking against blue sky, versus you know, the first half where, you know, it looked extremely dark and where a storm was coming in. So there's no hard and fast formula, I think, to deciphering whether or not something is real or fake, beyond really stopping and going, okay, this really does not look right. Has someone else raised the same questions as I have?
All right, so just to add on as well, so I quickly brought up the website. Actually, this website is called snopes.com, S-N-O-P-E-S, okay, .com. Essentially, this is like a website where you can take all the viral fake news that's going on in the world. You can just type in the headlines, paste it into Snopes, and immediately they'll show you whether that article that you search, chances are if you see it inside, all right, they'll give you a verdict at the very top of the page. All right, they'll tell you whether it is false, true, or under investigation. So this is actually a very popular platform to check on, you know, if you see something quite suspicious, you know, instead of just sharing it first, all right, go to a website like Snopes. It's a fact-checking website. Give it a try. Chances are you may even spot that particular, okay, a ridiculous piece of news inside this website. Just a little nugget of information. All right, so moving on. Do we have another question from the audience? Yes, gentleman right there.
Recently, I received this news. I do not know whether it's fake initially, but because it was not publicized after a period of time, I think it's fake. I don't know whether you heard about this. The news is that they said from next month, NTUC will only issue plastic bag if you buy 3 or more items. This in practice in Australia, because I lived in Australia before. But in Singapore, I'm not sure whether they're doing it, because after I come to this news, I didn't receive anything from the papers or anywhere. I assume it is fake.
Any tips, guidelines? Basically, I think it's a question really about, you know, if it is an announcement from an organization, you saw it through WhatsApp or social media, how do you verify whether, you know, is it a legit, you know, official piece of news? Let's just say from an organization about plastic bags. Yes, what any of our...
So I think the quickest way is to, if you're online already, is to actually go to NTUC's, say, Facebook page to see if they've made an announcement about it. So I think where previously, you know, any organization would have to let the news or the news agency know when they're introducing a new thing like this, now they can self-publish, right? So actually Facebook will probably receive it faster than a news outlet. The next thing is that, you know, like if you're still not sure, if maybe you're worried that, oh, maybe NTUC has let a select group of people know, but not the public, then I would say, you know, forward it on to a news agency like us, and, you know, then we can investigate, we can actually ask NTUC on your behalf. But I think the other thing is this also. It's just that I know it probably comes from well-meaning friends, from family members, and it's also true that if you haven't read it anywhere else, it probably is not true. Yeah, so I mean, sir, I think it's a very good thing lah, that you realize that, oh, I didn't read it in the paper, so probably it's not right.
Yeah, so I think two things. One is, remember we said checked sources, okay? Who is this news from? Where did you get it from? You might have to click on it to find out, but that will quickly resolve the issue of, is this fake or news? If it's directly from NTUC website, you bet it's news, it's real news. If it's some fishy, remember all the things that I mentioned to you, right? The telltale signs of it being, the source, the caption, the credits and whatnot, chances are it's fake. Okay. The other thing I noticed in Singapore, the fake news tend to revolve around these trivial matters of life, don't they? Right? There seems to be a pattern. If it's like, what was about salmon? Last year there was something about salmon being. Do you remember that one? What was that about? Also being
the
spread.
fake rice sold in NTUC.
That's too. But there was something about salmon too last year. It's again, it appeals to your fears and emotions, right? Because everybody shops at NTUC, right? Everybody eats rice. Recognize the pattern. They're trying to trick you, because it's such an easy, what we call clickbait, okay? You click on it because, my goodness, is this something that's affecting me? I click it, therefore the person makes money. Okay, so recognize the pattern. If it's something, of the building being on fire, if it's something like that, already put on your critical literacy glasses, like you did, okay? And then it only takes really a little bit of time for you to then catch it, okay? And call it out and remind or call it out to others as well so that they don't fall for it.
Yes, I think I'd just like to add on a little more on that. If you notice how I've searched, so NTUC, big organizations that, that affect a lot of Singaporeans, right? All the time they are being targeted for fake news because for NTUC's case, they have various messages, fake messages being spread on WhatsApp, on social media about them giving out free vouchers. Free vouchers is the number one thing that most people fall for because who doesn't want free vouchers, right? Same thing for plane tickets. If you see something over WhatsApp or even on your Facebook, SIA is giving away free $1 ticket to any destination in the world. Trust me, the moment you see that, immediately just tell your friends, please don't spread this. There's no such thing as a free $1 ticket one. If not, they go bankrupt already, right? Okay, so yes, so I think that's, in fact, I would like to commend our dear participant. So you actually, you actually used your critical skills because the moment you did not hear about it anywhere, the moment that is when, just to be safe in today's world, immediately become suspicious and start to, be more critical about it. All right, do we have another question from the audience? I think we have a lot coming from this side.
Actually,
so
can I add on to
yeah, no
earlier?
problem.
I think just on the note of promotions that you see online, so like such as the Jetstar $1 to go, or actually no, the Jetstar $1 to go is still quite believable lah. Yeah, sorry. So SIA $1 to go, maybe not so believable. More often than not, so not technically fake news because it's not news, it's a promotion. They would have made the photo look like it's from the SIA website. And then if you look at the link, if you don't look very clearly, it will look like it's directing you to an SIA website. It's not new, it's from, I think, Qantas or even different, like different companies. So it's very important to scrutinize actually what you're clicking on. And this is not just about websites, it's also about email. So recently there have been a number of phishing cases where people say it's like grace.grace.com. And if let's say your friend has emailed you from grace.com normally, and you maybe will be like, oh, maybe it's a system error. There's really no such thing in the online world, right? And it's very likely someone trying to get information from you for their benefit, and you lose your privacy in the process, and hopefully not money as well. So these things, it's worth actually just taking the extra 30 seconds to relook. And if you're not sure, so like maybe for me, Singapore Airlines website, right? For the longest time, I thought it was SIA.com, SingaporeAirlines.com. Actually, their website is called SingaporeAir.com. So like, it's also worth taking the extra 10 seconds to Google and to find out, oh, so actually how different is it from this link that I'm clicking? Yep.
All right, I do believe just now we have some hands over here. Anyone else? Yes, sorry, we'll just give those who haven't asked yet. All right, thank you, ma'am.
I don't use social media, just WhatsApp. And I don't have Facebook, I don't have Twitter or anything like that. So just email, or I just go to, Google, and I will look at various news outlets, well, in the US, because I'm following the US politics. Now, if I were to read some news by one outlet, let's say MSNBC, and I read the same thing or some similar topics at another BBC or CNN, I would assume that would be genuine, right? Because there's more than one outlet reporting the same thing, that differently but reporting the same thing. That would be safe enough, right? So I don't have to go and check, because I'm really bad.
Yes.
I don't see all the little details, you see.
Yeah.
So that would be safe enough, because it's somewhat like what the other lady has said, you know, you've seen it somewhere else and they're talking about the same thing, chances are it will be accurate.
So just checking more than one source, like
Yeah, because they're talking about the same thing, so that
Right.
something did happen.
so is
It's
having
just that
two
in
sources enough? Yeah.
Singapore, there isn't that many, or maybe I'm just not so in tune to, you know, I just read the papers and I believe what the paper says, you know. I mean, you check, right? You know, if not, I will be calling you and say, what nonsense are you talking about?
Yes,
See,
very true.
I would do that. But on my handphone or whatever it is, for Singapore, I don't know of many places to check. So now you say there's mothership.sg. That is one site I can check for local news, because you can't find things like that on Snopes or PolitiFact or something like that. So in Singapore, there's only Mothership.
So Mothership is not actually a verification platform. So Mothership is it's a content platform, I think, built to write news in a way that is maybe a bit more lighthearted compared to the major media outlets. So it's true that in Singapore, the three main media outlets that you can rely on would be Straits Times, Channel News Asia, and Today. And technically
Today
speaking,
online?
there's todayonline.com. Yes, yeah. And these three news outlets also have news applications. So you don't necessarily have to search. So if you download the applications onto your phone, then they actually can serve up the news to you as well. And when it comes to news from either of these three outlets, I mean, you can be almost certain that, you know, they have gone through a very strict verification process. Yeah, I mean, as someone who worked at CNA, it's not easy for something fake to bypass us. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Chiller, do you yourself have a particular, your personal preference and filtering system when you read, mainstream media, and, how do you cross-reference news sources? Do you have any habits to share?
Well, I just pretty much rely on BBC. I have a BBC application every morning with breakfast. That's what I do. I read the news with breakfast. That's kind of my routine. I follow politics on 3 different continents. So I'm not, I'm trying to stay up to date in the US, in Europe, and in Singapore a little bit. So that's not so easy to do. So I would say, the local coverage, my first go-to place would be, yes, Today Online or Channel News. Actually, Straits Times. To get it, because I also trust those media in terms of what we're talking about here today, which is fact, okay, which is they're not going to spread fake news and fake news being defined as what I defined as in terms of factuality and intentionality to mislead. I think those are reliable news sources. I do like Mothership. For the record, they're a little bit quirkier, they're alternative, they have more lighthearted news items as well. The reason I mentioned Mothership was because I think they can be even faster in fact-checking than your prestige media, right? So Straits Times, Channel News Asia, and they just have a smaller scope, smaller team, but they're very much onto fake news. So that's why I'm saying if you feel like you encountered fake news and you want to search online, is this fake or not? Chances are you will find it on Mothership if it's fake.
All right, so maybe because we still have time, I think, for one more question. Yes, we'll talk, okay, for the men, then after that we'll have you over there, sir. No problem.
I'm actually speaking from the point of view that, I attend some places and the speakers may say something that is not correct. For example, I feel that, there's a lot of things talking about the millennials being not resilient or talking about Malaysians are more hardworking. And I find that this is very harming to the people whom that is not real of them. Because I do find millennials who are very resilient and so on and so on. And I do find Singaporeans who are more hardworking than Malaysian. So I don't know how we are going to classify this thing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think there's something to do with broad overgeneralization, broad sweeping statements probably. So if given today's hyper-connected world and people expressing their opinions all the time on alternative news medias, like something related to what the madam has asked, then how would you really address that? Broad sweeping statements and kind of uninformed worldviews, I would say. Because a lot of the information we read today, like the echo chamber effect, like what Dr. Chiller mentioned, it shapes sometimes, how we view the world, how we view others as well. Yeah, so how, what do you think would be, the most basic level? What should we do or what should we reconsider? Yeah.
Okay, so that wouldn't be news, right? So that does not qualify as news. That is social media, right? Exactly. The echo chamber, the bandwagon, the being very open to texts that echo what you want to hear, right? That resonate with you, that correspond to what you think is real and what you think is reality, then you're going to be just, you're going to just soak it up, right? You're going to soak it in. And this is where the criticality comes in, right? You don't necessarily have to participate in that discussion, so but you just don't spread it, okay? If you're not comfortable with participating in it, if you want, go ahead. But some of those discussions can also very fast, very speedily devolve to a level that, is really bad, right? It's kind of the tension and throwing terms at each other and things like that. That is not news, that is just what people do and what people have done always, right? Just now it's more public. Previously this was done in smaller groups behind closed doors. Now it's on social media, so everybody can see it, and that's the real danger of it, right? Because it gets outside of the context.
All right, so yes, time.
Sorry. I think, just to add on, that is the reality of the world we live in today, in that the tensions are very real. Because with information so readily available, there will be people who latch on to a particular opinion and will not let it go. And then there will be people who disagree with the opinion and wonder what they should do with it. And I think this exists for a lot of people in the room. And the question is always, okay, so do I call it out? Or do I keep quiet? And there's no right or wrong answer to this. Because if you keep quiet, you can prevent the spread of it, right? It's like, you don't share it. If I call it out, how do I engage with this person in a meaningful, useful way? And I think a lot of the time, maybe we don't make a stand online because, firstly, it's tough. You don't know if you're talking to someone real. I think it's difficult because the onslaught of comments can be extremely scary, because it's just what if I stand up for my conviction and yet I get shot down for it? And then there is the part where you just go, oh, but then who's going to care about my opinion? And these are very real questions. They'll differ from topic to topic. There are a few hotly debated topics in the news, I guess, in the last couple of weeks. And I think ultimately, we have to live in a space where we don't become so cynical to the point where we just go, people are just going to say whatever they want to say and I'm not going to give a crap and I'm not going to participate in this discussion. It may exist offline. So for instance, these talks used to exist in the kopitiam, right? When you go downstairs and you just go, do you read the thing in the news that day? Whereas nowadays it's changed to, do you see that day on Facebook? Someone say the millennial vs strawberry generation. Actually, no, I don't think so. These conversations can actually start very easily. And it may not necessarily be at the expense of yourself or at the expense of your online persona. But at the same time, I do think that there are ways to continue moving the needle. Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, so as promised, sir, I'll have one last question for the evening.
Okay, good evening. I think the whole presentation is very good. What I like to see more is more platforms. Let people take responsibility. We do not want to have a Singapore that's high controlling, punishment, those I think. Let people decide on their own. Let them. You see, if you have good people, educated people on your WhatsApp, they will check also and let you know, hey, this is fake. That is good. So if you get a fake one, just say, I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about this. But can you, if anyone can check. I will check tomorrow. Like today, I received one about various shops in Giant is closing down. So I would ring up 7-Eleven or I'll ring up Giant and find out whether it's true or not. But let's make a difference. Facebook, social media are fun things. Let's not kill the fun in Singapore. Have fun.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, that is what it's all
Ladies
about.
and gentlemen, big round of applause for that.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, you know. We must not lose the fun. The family must be united. The family, WhatsApp is about family, about gathering together, getting and having fun, having excitement. If I'm at home, I'm on Facebook for 10 hours. How does Facebook attract me? How does Facebook keep me active?
All right.
That is what we need to do.
We thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, I think on that parting note, all right, firstly, I'd like to thank the gentleman for his sharing. It's not really a question per se, but I think to build upon what he has said, okay, yes, we're living in this generation. We're surrounded by technology, digital news, all right? Ultimately, I think at the end of the day, maybe the speakers will also agree with me that, you know, the moment we see something that we should be suspicious about, if it sounds too good to be true, all right, if it sounds sometimes too ridiculous, the first instinct, just be suspicious, don't press the share button. Moral of the story. All right, so on that note, ladies and gentlemen, join me in giving them a very big round of applause for Ms. Diane and Dr. Chiller.